Wake up early. Unexpected benefits nobody talks about. What if I told you that the secret to better health, sharper focus, more money, and a calmer mind happens before most people even open their eyes? There's a habit so simple, so ancient, so completely free that billionaires swear by it, neuroscientists are obsessed with it, and yet the majority of people are unknowingly destroying its power every single morning. And no, it's not meditation. It's not a cold shower. It's not a green smoothie. It's something you've heard 1,000 times, but probably never understood at this level. Stay with me, because what you're about to discover might just change the entire trajectory of your life. And if content like this speaks to you, make sure you hit subscribe. We drop deep dive insights every week that most people never take the time to find. 1. The war you fight every morning. Let's be honest, the alarm goes off at 5 a.m. and something primal inside you revolts. Your hand moves to the snooze button before your brain even registers what's happening. 9 minutes later, it goes off again. You snooze it, again and again, until suddenly you're scrambling out of bed, already late, already stressed, already behind, and the day hasn't even started yet. Sound familiar? You're not lazy, you're not weak, you're not broken. You're just caught in one of the most misunderstood battles in modern human life. The war between your conscious goals and your unconscious biology. And until you understand why that war exists, you'll keep losing it every single morning. Here's what's really happening. Your body runs on something called a circadian rhythm, a roughly 24-hour internal clock that regulates when you feel sleepy, when you feel alert, when your hormones peak and dip, and when your body does its deepest repair work. This clock doesn't care about your alarm. It doesn't care about your ambitions. It only responds to light, darkness, temperature, and habit. When you stay up until midnight scrolling your phone, bathing your eyes in blue light that signals it's midday to your brain, and then try to force yourself awake at 5 a.m., you're not just tired, you're biologically misaligned. Your melatonin hasn't finished its job. Your cortisol hasn't started rising yet. Your body is confused, fighting against you, and so is your mind. But here's what the research actually shows. The time you wake up isn't just about productivity. It's about something far deeper. It's about who you become in that quiet window of time before the world demands anything from you. The people who have cracked this, teachers, artists, parents, writers, athletes, all describe the same phenomenon. Early morning feels like stolen time, like a secret room in the house that no one else knows about, a space where clarity exists before the noise rushes in. The biggest lie: I'm just not a morning person. You've said it. I've said it. Almost everyone has said it at some point. I'm just not a morning person. It's treated like a personality trait, like eye color, something fixed, inherited, permanent. But here's the truth. While chronotype does have a genetic component, it is far more flexible than most people believe, and far more shaped by behavior than biology. Dr. Elise Facer-Childs, a sleep researcher at Monash University, conducted a landmark study in 2019 where she successfully sleep schedules of confirmed night owls by just 2 to 3 hours, using behavioral interventions alone with no medication. The result? Significant improvements in reaction time, cognitive performance, mental well-being, and reduced feelings of depression and stress. You are not a prisoner of your chronotype. You are a product of your habits. And habits, unlike genetics, can be changed. 2. The neuroscience of the early morning brain. In the first 1 to 2 hours after waking up, your brain is in a neurological state that is fundamentally different from any other time of day. Let's break down what's actually happening inside your skull. 2.1. Cortisol, your body's natural performance drug. Drug cortisol has gotten a terrible reputation. People hear cortisol and think stress, weight gain, anxiety. But here's what most people don't know. Cortisol is also your body's most powerful natural performance enhancer. Every morning, approximately 30 to 45 minutes after waking, your body undergoes what scientists call the cortisol awakening response, CAR, a natural surge in cortisol levels of 38% to 162% above your baseline. This surge mobilizes energy, sharpens alertness, boosts immune function, and primes your brain for learning and decision-making. Think of it as your body's internal espresso shot. Free, no side effects, and perfectly calibrated to your own biology. The cortisol awakening response is strongest in the early morning hours, and it works best when you expose yourself to natural light within the first 30 minutes of waking. When you wake up early and get outside immediately, you're supercharging this cortisol response, triggering the release of serotonin, the neurotransmitter associated with mood stability, focus, and well-being. 2.2. Theta waves and the hypnopompic state. In the transition between sleep and wakefulness, your brain passes through the hypnopompic state, generating theta waves, the same brainwave frequency associated with deep meditation, creative flow states, and heightened intuition. For a brief window right after you wake up, your brain is operating in a state that experienced meditators spend years trying to consciously access. The logical, analytical prefrontal cortex is still warming up. The filters are down. The mental chatter hasn't started yet. This is why great writers, artists, and innovators throughout history were obsessive early risers who worked immediately upon waking. Toni Morrison wrote in the early morning hours. Haruki Murakami wakes at 4 a.m. Beethoven, Darwin, Ben Franklin, all notorious early risers who described the morning as their most creatively alive hours. They weren't grinding through morning routines to be productive. They were harvesting a neurological state that most people sleep straight through. 2.3. Decision fatigue and why morning decisions are your best. Every decision you make throughout the day depletes a finite reservoir of cognitive energy. This is called decision fatigue, and it's one of the most well-documented phenomena in behavioral psychology. Judges give harsher sentences in the afternoon. Doctors order more unnecessary tests later in their shifts. Consumers make worse financial decisions after a long day of shopping. The quality of your choices genuinely deteriorates as the day wears on. When you wake up early and protect the first hours of your morning from external demands, you are making your most important decisions with a fresh, fully resourced brain, before your decision-making reserves have been depleted by anyone else's agenda. 3. The unexpected physical benefits. 3.1. Morning light and your metabolism. A study published in the Journal of Clinical Endocrinology and Metabolism found that exposure to bright light in the morning has a measurable effect on fat metabolism. People who got adequate morning light exposure had lower body mass indexes, independent of diet and exercise. Morning light enters your eyes, hits the suprachiasmatic nucleus, your master circadian pacemaker, and sends signals throughout your entire body. This synchronization optimizes metabolic function, improves insulin sensitivity, and regulates hunger hormones. Chronic circadian misalignment, waking late, using artificial light, eating at irregular times, is now strongly linked to metabolic syndrome, obesity, type 2 diabetes, and cardiovascular disease. 3.2. Exercise timing and the morning advantage research from Appalachian State University found that people who exercised at 7 a.m. had significantly better blood pressure outcomes than those who exercised later. Morning exercisers showed a 10% decrease in blood pressure throughout the day and 25% more nighttime blood pressure dips, a critical marker for cardiovascular health. A 2021 study in the International Journal of Obesity found that morning exercise activated fat-burning pathways more effectively than evening exercise, particularly targeting belly fat. People who exercise in the morning are also dramatically more consistent because morning exercise hasn't had a full day of surprises, overrunning meetings, and energy depletion to sabotage it yet. 3.3. Sleep quality, the counterintuitive payoff. Waking up early, done correctly, actually improves your sleep quality. It seems paradoxical, but here's why it works. One of the primary drivers of sleep quality is sleep pressure, the buildup of adenosine in the brain throughout the day. The longer you've been awake and active, the higher your sleep pressure and the more deeply you fall asleep at night. People who wake early and get morning light also produce melatonin earlier in the evening, naturally feeling sleepy at a more biologically appropriate time, creating a positive feedback loop. Early wake, morning light, earlier melatonin, earlier, deeper sleep, easier early wake. 3.4. Immune function and the morning window. Your immune system follows a circadian rhythm of its own. Research published in the Journal of Experimental Medicine shows that certain T cells are more effective at attacking infected cells in the morning hours. People who consistently disrupt their circadian rhythms show measurably impaired immune function. They get sick more frequently, recover more slowly, and show higher rates of chronic inflammation. 4. The mental health revolution. Before sunrise. 4.1. The quiet before the noise. There is a particular quality to early morning silence that is unlike any other silence in the day. It's not the silence of a late night, which carries guilt and approaching anxiety. It's forward-facing, pregnant with possibility. Nothing has gone wrong yet. Nobody has emailed you with a problem yet. In that space, many people experience something close to flow, a state of full, effortless presence. No performance required, no social mask needed. Just you, your thoughts, and the gradually brightening world. When you sleep late, you surrender this window entirely. You wake up reactive, immediately plugged into other people's timelines and demands. Your first experience of the day is response rather than intention. 4.2. Depression, anxiety, and the circadian connection. The relationship between sleep timing and mental health is one of the most robustly documented findings in psychiatric research. A massive genome-wide study published in JAMA Psychiatry in 2021, analyzing over 800,000 individuals, found that people predisposed to be morning types had significantly lower risk of depression and anxiety. Each 1 hour earlier shift in sleep timing was associated with a 23% lower risk of major depressive disorder. The mechanisms are multiple. Morning light boosts serotonin production. Consistent wake times stabilize mood-regulating neurotransmitter cycles. Morning activity reduces rumination, and the sense of agency from an intentional morning creates self-efficacy, one of the most powerful buffers against depression and anxiety known to science. 4.3. The identity shift. Who you become. When you successfully wake up early, especially when it's difficult, you prove something to yourself. You prove that your values can override your impulses, that your long-term goals can override short-term comfort. James Clear, author of Atomic Habits, describes this as identity-based habit formation. When you wake at 5 a.m. and tell yourself, I am someone who rises early, who invests in their own development, and then prove it with your actions, you're not just building a habit, you're building a self. And that self, the person who follows through, who maintains discipline, who chooses growth over comfort, begins to bleed into every other area of life. 5. The productivity angle, but not the way you think. 5.1. It's not about more hours. It's about better hours. If you shift from sleeping midnight 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. 6 a.m., you haven't gained any hours. So why does virtually every person who makes this shift report dramatically improved productivity? Because not all hours are created equal. 2 hours between 6 and 8 a.m., before the digital world wakes up, before your phone buzzes, before social obligations begin, are worth more in cognitive output than the equivalent time at 8 p.m., when decision-making is depleted and the day's stress still reverberates through your nervous system. Cal Newport, author of Deep Work, argues that the capacity for sustained, high-value concentration exists in its purest form in the early morning hours before distraction takes hold. 5.2. The proactive versus reactive spectrum. Imagine a spectrum. On one end, proactive. You're driving your day, making deliberate choices, acting from your values and goals. On the other end, reactive. Your day is being written for you by other people's emails, crises, and timelines. Early risers who protect their mornings build a proactive buffer at the start of each day. In that buffer, they clarify their priorities, do their most important work, process their thoughts, and establish an intentionality that colors the entire rest of the day. 5.3. Compound time, the arithmetic that changes everything. If you wake just 1 hour earlier each day and invest that hour intentionally, that's 365 hours per year, more than 9 extra full-time weeks of focused work annually. What could you build in 9 extra weeks every year? A business, a book, a body, a skill, a relationship, a life. Compound interest is considered the 8th wonder of the world in finance. Compound time, the accumulated power of consistently protected morning hours, is its equivalent in human development. 6. Relationships, family, and the social dimension. 6.1. The well-slept self is a better self. Sleep science is absolutely clear. Sleep deprivation has measurable, significant effects on emotional regulation. Matthew Walker, author of Why We Sleep, describes a striking finding. The amygdala shows 60% greater reactivity in sleep-deprived individuals. the prefrontal cortex loses its ability to regulate impulsive emotional reactions. In practical terms, when you're chronically sleep deprived, you're neurologically more prone to losing your temper with your kids, snapping at your partner, misreading your coworkers' intentions. Early risers who go to bed early consistently get more and better sleep, producing a calmer, more patient, more empathetic version of themselves. 6.2. Morning solitude makes you better company. When you start the day having already taken care of yourself, having moved your body, clarified your mind, done meaningful work, had quiet time, you arrive at your relationships with fullness rather than depletion. You're not showing up needing to vent or seek validation. You're showing up with genuine capacity to give attention, to listen, to be present. 7. Spirituality, purpose, and the bigger picture. 7.1. The morning and the question of meaning. Viktor Frankl observed that the human being's deepest need is meaning. The sense that one's life matters, and one is moving in a direction aligned with something larger than immediate impulse. Every morning presents you with the same fundamental question: what kind of person are you going to be today? When you wake early, when you choose intention over inertia, growth over comfort, purpose over pleasure, you are answering that question with your actions rather than your words. I take my life seriously. I believe my days matter. 7.2. Ancient wisdom and the sacred morning. Virtually every major wisdom tradition in human history has recognized the morning as sacred time. Buddhist, Islamic, Hebrew, Christian, monastic, and Ayurvedic traditions all converge on the same intuition. The early morning is not just a time of day. It is a threshold, a liminal space where something essential and human can be nurtured or squandered. Modern neuroscience, the theta brainwave state, the cortisol awakening response, the serotonin boost from morning light, is increasingly discovering the biological basis for what these traditions recognized intuitively. Ancient wisdom and modern science meeting at the same conclusion: the morning matters. 8. The practical guide: how to actually become an early riser. 8.1. The gradual shift method, not cold turkey. The most common mistake: trying to shift your wake time by 2 or 3 hours overnight. Your circadian rhythm can shift roughly 15 to 30 minutes per day before creating physiological dysregulation. The correct approach: shift your wake time by 15 to 20 minutes every 3 to 4 days. If you wake at 8 a.m. and want to wake at 6 a.m., that's a gradual 6-week transition, but one your biology can accommodate, which means you'll actually stick to it. 8.2. Anchor your bedtime, not just your wake time. The most powerful lever for becoming an early riser isn't an earlier alarm, it's an earlier bedtime. Decide your target wake time, count backward 7 to 8 hours, and begin your wind-down routine 60 to 90 minutes before that bedtime. Key wind-down practices: dim the lights at least 1 hour before bed. Bright overhead lights suppress melatonin production. Eliminate screen blue light. Use blue light blocking glasses or simply stop using screens. Lower bedroom temperature to 65 to 68 degrees Fahrenheit, 18 to 20 degrees, for optimal deep sleep. Avoid alcohol. It fragments sleep architecture and impairs REM sleep. Create a consistent pre-sleep ritual. Your brain learns cues for sleep. 8.3. The 5-second rule for getting out of bed. When your alarm goes off, count backward from 5, 4, 2, 1, and physically move before you reach 0. This interrupts the brain's habit loop before your prefrontal cortex can construct elaborate justifications for staying in bed. The anticipation of waking is almost always worse than the waking itself. 8.4. Design a morning that's worth waking up for. Discipline is not sufficient. Desire is required. If you don't have a compelling reason to wake up, no amount of alarms or willpower will keep you consistent. Design a morning you're genuinely excited about. This doesn't mean forcing yourself to love workout videos if you hate them. It means finding the version of morning that speaks to your particular combination of values, interests, and goals. Ask yourself, what is the one thing I never seem to find time for, but that would genuinely nourish me if I did it regularly? That thing belongs in your morning. 8.5. Strategic use of light and temperature. Within the first 30 minutes of waking, get outside or expose your eyes to bright natural light. No sunglasses. Even on cloudy days, outdoor light is 10 to 100 times brighter than indoor lighting. If you live in a region with dark winters, invest in a 10,000 lux SAG light therapy lamp used for 20 to 30 minutes while having your morning coffee. It replicates the effects of natural sunlight and clinically improves mood, energy, and circadian regulation. A morning shower, warm then cold, rapidly increases alertness, raises core temperature, boosts norepinephrine, and creates a physiological sense of wakefulness that no amount of coffee can fully replicate. 8.6. The no phone first hour rule. Do not check your phone for the first hour after waking. Not your email, not your texts, not social media, not the news. Your phone is an attention harvesting machine. The moment you open it, you import other people's agendas, anxieties, and demands into your freshly awake consciousness, destroying the theta wave state, the cortisol window of clarity, and the morning solitude you woke up to own. Keep your phone in another room if necessary. Use a physical alarm clock. The first hour of your day should belong entirely to you. 9. Early rising for different types of people. 9.1. Parents of young children. For parents, the early morning might be the only time in the entire day that belongs to you, before you become mom or dad and all that entails. Even 20 to 30 minutes of protected morning time can be transformative. Wake up 30 minutes before the household. Sit quietly with coffee. Journal 3 sentences. Breathe intentionally. That's enough. 9.2. Night shift workers. If you have a non-traditional schedule, the literal prescription doesn't apply, but the principle does. Protect the first hours of your wakefulness from external demands. Whether your morning is at 6 a.m. or 2 p.m., that window right after you wake is neurologically precious. Own it before you give it away. 9.3. Students. For students, early rising is one of the highest leverage habits possible. Research consistently shows that students who wake earlier and get adequate sleep outperform sleep-deprived night study students on virtually every metric. Sleep isn't the enemy of studying. It is the studying. Sleep is when your brain consolidates and stores the information you've been learning. Sleep early, wake early, study in the morning, and let sleep do the consolidation work. 10. The bigger picture. What early rising is really about. 10.1. The scarcity of time and the choice of where to spend it. You have approximately 28,000 days in a typical human life. The morning hours of each of those days are a daily installment in that finite total. They can be spent in reactive, unconscious default mode, or they can be spent deliberately, intentionally, in service of the life you actually want to be living. The compounding effect over years and decades is staggering. The person who spends 30 years of mornings in intentional investment in themselves becomes almost incomprehensibly different from the person who spent those same 30 years pressing snooze and starting each day in chaos. 10.2. It's not about being a morning person. It's about being present. The goal of waking early isn't to join some exclusive club of high achievers. It isn't to perform discipline or signal virtue. It isn't to maximize productivity at the expense of rest and pleasure. The goal is presence. The goal is to show up to your own life as a conscious, intentional, fully awake participant, rather than a sleepwalking bystander. Every morning that you rise with intention is a small act of self-respect, a vote for the person you're choosing to be, a quiet insistence that your days and your life matter enough to be lived on purpose. That is the unexpected benefit of waking early that no productivity video will ever fully capture. Not the extra work hours, not the metabolic boost, not the mood improvement. It's the profound, quiet, cumulative experience of realizing that you are, in fact, the author of your own life. And the story begins every morning before the sun comes up, in that moment when you decide, once again, to rise. So here's the truth nobody tells you. Waking up early isn't about the alarm. It's about the life waiting on the other side of it. Better health, sharper focus, deeper purpose, a calmer, more intentional version of you, showing up every single day. The morning doesn't ask much, just that you show up for it. Start with 15 minutes earlier tomorrow. That's it, one small shift, and watch what follows. If this hit home for you, drop a comment telling me what time you're committing to wake up tomorrow. I read every single one. Like this video if it gave you something real. Share it with someone who keeps hitting snooze on their potential. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to Wisdom Beacon. We're building something here for people who take their lives seriously. The alarm is set. The question is, will you answer it? Thank you for your watching.